All right, guys. Welcome to our webinar with Constructive Playthings. We're going to do best practices for early childhood classroom environments. As everyone is logging in, if you can put your name, your email, and your school that you're with in the chat for me. Love to see where everyone's from. I am in Alabama. It's a little cloudy today, so let me know how your weather is too. I've been in the childcare field for 18 plus years. I began my journey as a teacher's assistant and worked my way up to becoming a director. And I just love to share my knowledge with others in my field. Stephanie's in Ohio. Welcome, Stephanie. She says it's nice and sunny and 75. That sounds like a beautiful day, Stephanie. Christy says it's hot in Northeast Texas. Casey is with Inspire. Welcome, guys. Again, as you're joining, let me know your name, your email, what school you're with. Hello, Sophie. Casey's in New York, sunny and 75. So just a few reminders as you guys are sharing that information with us in the chat. We're going to utilize our chat throughout. And there is also a Q&A section as well for any specific questions that you would like to ask. Stephanie is with Small Hands, Big Dreams. Hello, Beth. Beth is in Fort Worth. It's warm. So today for our webinar, our little agenda here is we're just welcoming everyone along. Hello, Terry from Douglas in Pennsylvania. We're going to touch base on what Inspire Care 360 has to offer, some extra options we have with some affordable staff healthcare, our star rating and reputation. We're also going to meet our guests with Constructive Playthings, Seth, Julie, and John. We're going to have a little discussion, and then at the very end, we're going to raffle a $100 gift card for Constructive Playthings. In the chat, you're going to find a link for the certificate. If you will just copy and paste that link in your browser and fill in the information, you will receive your certificate for 1 hour of training. Hi, Patrice in Washington. So I am honored to introduce you to your host today. He is the founder and CEO of Inspire Care 360. He owns 4 ECE schools. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Tony DiAugustino.
Hey, Jesse, thank you so much. A wonderful emceeing up front here, and it's great to see so many people from all over the country as we have. So thanks so much, Jesse. I really appreciate the time that you take to make sure that these things get started correctly. I'm excited to talk with everybody today. We have some wonderful guests and a wonderful company, and we're going to get started in just a moment. And we want everybody to hang on. We're going to be really tight to staying within the hour. So don't worry, but let's make sure to get you in the raffle. And we do have this raffle at the end of it. It's Constructive Playthings, who is our presenting subject matter expertise guest today, is also generously donating a $100 gift card to any of their high quality toys, vinyl blocks, the like, all the kind of things that early education needs. And so let's just jump right on in and get started. Um, so first we're going to talk about, just do a little bit of housekeeping here. Healthy Advantage, again, it is becoming that time of year when a lot of people are going through open enrollment. So it does not mean that you cannot do this. You can add Healthy Advantage at any time of year. And remember, what's Healthy Advantage? It's like a deconstructed major medical program. So it's not your AFLAC program where your staff just pays some fees and then has to submit bills to that provider. It is not major medical either. It doesn't have any high deductibles. It doesn't have any deductibles, honestly. It is a great program, very flexible with four different options. But one of the top options, which is only like $130 a month compared to like $400 for major medical, you have $15 office visits to your primary care, $15 specialist visits, $50 urgent care. So we not only have teachers who take advantage of this and administration, but owners take advantage of this. I actually have this program for myself. And there's a lot more to this. So if you're interested in learning more about it, let us know in the chat and we'll set up a meeting with you and Jen. And Jen runs for us our Healthy Advantage program. Again, no high premiums, no deductibles. And it is very low for owners and operators with this program because for the first up to the first 10 people, it is $50 per person from the employer. And then after that, it's only $25 a month per person instead of saying, hey, we have a $400 program for one person and you have to split that with them. So you're paying 200 and they're paying 200. And this, all the programs include telemedicine. So that means for the household, 24/7. You can get on with US based medical doctors, there's pediatricians, all that, and it all comes with it. You say, well, you know what? I have a major medical plan under someone else's, and then it has a telemedicine. But believe it or not, they have deductibles up to $75 just for a telemedicine visit. Here, no deductibles at all, no additional premiums. And it meets all the requirements. So if you have 50 FTEs, and what's important to realize is you might say, well, in my school I don't, but I do have another business. Those businesses all are included with the number of employees you have. So this does meet the Affordable Care Act. If you need to have that requirement to avoid those big penalties. And we support you with all the benefit administration. So what does that mean? That means that we help you do the census. We then help you get ready to do the rollout. We actually do the rollout with you, for you, and then we talk to all the staff members that are interested in the program. And from there, that allows us to come back and make sure that everything is perfect set up for what you want. You approve it. We go ahead and then we set up the payroll. Sometimes it's electronic if we have relationships like with ADP, Paycor, Paylocity, what have you. But if it's a small hometown one, we also set it up so you get it manually so you can send it to them. So we do a lot of the lifting for you. Again, 5 programs, there's 6 supplemental programs involved with it. But let's move on forward. If you're interested, just put a note in the chat and Jen will get back with you on that. We also have IC360 Rep. If you haven't heard about this, this is a amazing tool. When you think about how it is in childcare that people want to use it. The number one way is a testimonial, right? You have a toddler mom who goes to a birthday party and someone else says, hey, I'm looking for childcare. And that one mom goes, oh, I go to the most amazing place. That's awesome. That's the best. But second to it are the testimonials of your existing families as well as staff. And what IC360 Rep does, it allows you to collect that appropriately because Google, Facebook, all these sites that have reviews have algorithms that really go back to making sure they don't get false reviews or spammed reviews. IC360 rep works hand in hand with all these sites so you can solicit directly to them by email, by text, by having a QR code right at your front desk so someone could scan it and do a review for you right there. How valuable is a 4 or 5 star review? It's amazingly valuable. Now, let's say someone gets you a 3 star review. I once had a father who decided to give us a 3 star with one of my schools. And the reason for it is, or two or one, but the reason for it was is he wasn't getting artwork from one of our teachers who was relatively new in the preschool. She felt that she was supposed to hold it quarterly and hand it. We coached her after we learned that they weren't getting artwork, which they wanted every day. From then on in, they were getting artwork every day. He came back, re-reviewed us with a 5 star review because we were proactive and we took it. That is the power of IC360 Rep. It puts the ability for you to manage your own reputation instead of in the hands of anybody out on social media who might not be happy. You build that recognizable brand. You get also insights on many other childcare providers and what kind of reviews they're having. So there are reports on that. There's also opportunities to have an AI, so it helps you screen and provide the best replies. If you do get something on your site that didn't come through this, that was a negative review or one that you would like some clarification, there's our AI tools that help you write directly the best way to respond to that and smart insights. This program, I'll tell you, there's not, for all of our members who've brought this on board, not one has stopped this program since they started. So if you want to learn more, just let us know in the comments in the chat and we will go ahead and reach out to you so we can give you a demo of it. All right, so it's time for them to come on. Seth, Julie, John, if you want to pop on, fantastic. How are you folks doing again?
Doing well.
And the reason I say do it again, because we do always a prep call. And we try to act like this is the first time we've seen each other, but no, we've seen each other a few minutes ago. And so I just wanted to introduce Seth Frieden. And Seth is the CEO and owner of Constructive Playthings. Julie Spencer is not only the product development, but she really is a subject matter expert in the field of structuring classrooms and really the thought process and why the psychology of doing that. So she's going to be doing the majority of the presentation today. And then John Wilson, he's over business development. He's your person for contact. If you're like, hey, listen, I'm really interested in understanding how I can, do some work with constructive playthings if it makes sense for you. Okay, so John will be your contact. They're going to all pop on at different times. We're going to have everybody on. And Seth, though, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about constructive playthings. We're not going to be any, there's no big pitch here, but this is about a journey that you've been on, huh?
Yeah, Tony, thank you for the opportunity to speak with your Inspire Care members. I appreciate that. Yeah, so for me, I've grown up with this truly a family business started by my grandparents, and I've grown up with it my entire life. My grandmother was a lot like you guys out in the field. She was a preschool teacher. Couldn't find what she needed back in the day. All the dolls back then were blonde hair, blue eyes. Well, she needed multicultural, multi-ethnic dolls that looked like the students in her classrooms. So she went out and pioneered that herself. Lo and behold, she founded Constructive Playthings. My grandfather was founded U.S. Toy Company, and together they worked together as two different companies, but under the same roof. We grew from their apartment at President's Gardens, as it says here, if you're familiar with that in Kansas City. It's a small little apartment complex into many stores across the country in retail. And then, they had catalog business and a big warehouse facility that we have today. So I've seen the progression over the years. I got to watch it. My grandmother would take me with her to the store. I'd stamp checks. I'd do everything you'd think of in type of a business. They would throw me into it. So I kind of grew up with it just by default. And I always wanted a free lunch. My grandmother would take me and I get a free lunch out of it. So it was a win for everybody. And so lo and behold, I went to college, graduated. My dad, who was a doctor, not in the business, everyone thinks it's my dad's side of the business, had actually nothing to do with my father, who's on my mom's side of the business. And my mom didn't join the business. She was actually not in the business. So neither one of my parents were in the business. My uncle ran the business for many years with my grandmother. My grandmother subsequently passes away. I joined the business in a variety of different aspects. I went to college, got a finance degree. I worked outside. My father, the reason I bring him up, because he encouraged me to go work somewhere else outside the business, because in a family business, you have to have thick skin. And I know Tony shaking his head there. He's got family members in his business, and so we operate in similar vein. And so I was encouraged to go work somewhere else, which I did to know that I can make it on my own. And it wasn't the name on the back of my jersey why I am where I am today. And so I learned the business from the ground up. I worked at our store in Chicago, and then I came back to Kansas City, went overseas, spent a year of my life in China, in Asia, traveling all around, sourcing products, working with our factories, getting to know who our products were and who our customers were before I was really ready for this role that I'm in today. So we've had to morph and adapt the company. The mantra that I live by, and Julie and the rest of my team knows, is the only thing constant is change. And so our products are changing, our customers are changing, our the way we do things changes. There was no Amazon when I started, right? And now Amazon's a big piece of what we do today. There was no AI 2 years ago, right? And we're all kind of using AI today. So as things kind of evolve and change, we are a company that does that, and that's kind of what part of the vision I've instilled in the company, and the people that work here all agree that we have to be looking out for the next thing and kind of be on that forefront. So. Um, More recently, we've shed our U.S. toy division. So we sold that last year at this time, and so we're 100% focused on constructed playthings. So I just want to leave that in your mind that our mission and our goal is really to make and find the best products that we can that last and have a good quality in the environment in which they're used. Right. My grandmother was to the day she died, she loved picking product because that was what she stood behind. That was what her name was on the product, and I got to see that firsthand. So she wanted to make sure that kids could play with it and it got used and it held up, right? That it was quality, that they didn't have to throw it away and buy a new one every year. So that was really what we stand true to, and that hallmark still is rings true today in our environment. And Julie will be able to speak
Wonderful.
more to that coming up here, but that's kind of who we are, where we got to, and where we are today. And Tony,
Great,
does that
Seth.
sum it up in a good way?
You did a wonderful job. I really appreciate it, Seth. And for everybody out there to know is you should know that Inspire Care 360, since our inception back in 2016, coming on 10 years now, has had a group purchasing organization. For a couple of years, Constructive Playthings has been part of it, but honestly, not until Seth and myself had a time about 6 months ago to really look at where they're evolving, and they really were exploding and really growing fast. And for that reason, we have reinvigorated that affiliate relationship. So they are a hallmark to our ongoing growing GPO program. And we're really excited that we are partners with them in that sense. So you do get significant benefits of working with Constructive Playthings through Inspire Care 360. If you don't have a membership with Inspire Care 360, encourage you to, but if you don't, you still can work directly with Constructive Playthings, and you'll learn a little bit later about that today. But with that said, I'm going to move us on board. Seth, thank you for your time. Let's get to Julie. All right. Thank you so much, Julie. And here you are. What are we going to talk about today, Julie? And before we do that, just tell us a little bit about your role with what you do there.
So it's just a little bit of background. I was a preschool teacher for 30 years in the classroom, and about 12 years ago, I moved to Constructive Playthings and do product development, the catalog, website, just looking for product and developing product that, again, to Seth's point, will meet our standards of high quality. That is our number one thing. So I've loved transitioning from a classroom to this kind of environment. And today we're going to talk about best practices for setting up a classroom, how physical space impacts behavior, engagement, and development, why a well-organized room promotes independence and exploration. And I want you to think of the idea of the classroom as the third teacher.
Hmm. Interesting. So this is fantastic. I'm looking forward to this discussion today, Julie. It's great to also see, like, from Jess up front to yourself, people are coming out of that childcare space and just doing a different role in it that has a different level of thought that you can add back. So we're excited about the presentation. Here you go.
Thank you. So we're going to be best practices for setting up an early childhood classroom. And I think before we start, the thought of the classroom as a third teacher. We know that well-designed classroom spaces significantly impact children's behavior, their engagement with materials, and their development. When you create a comfortable, inviting, organized environment for children, it promotes their exploration with the ultimate goal of working independently in a classroom. So the first things we want to think about are defining your learning centers. This is going to look different for everyone based on the size of your classrooms, the age of your classrooms, whether you have 3 to 5-year-olds or more multi-age or infants. So you want to define that first. And then you look at how you label those areas. So you want those areas to be clearly labeled and defined so children understand what they are. They need to be intentional. And when you're setting up those classrooms intentional or in those areas, intentionally setting up materials that help develop that area. I think it's really important always to make sure you've got some type of literacy component in every classroom, or in every area. That might look like bringing blueprints in for a block area. So the children are understanding that there's written materials that how buildings start. It might be images in an art area of a famous painter, recipe books in your dramatic play area that have pictures of foods and then the recipe. So literacy is kind of an important one to make sure you're touching in all areas. You want to make sure
So,
you're, oh, I'm sorry.
oh, I just want to ask you, Julie, do you mind me asking, when you create these, for lack of a better term, stations within the classroom, um, you know, is there a certain amount, because I'm sure classrooms are all different sizes, depending on ratios, depending on the kids. Do you have sort of in your mind a thought about how many stations there should be in a classroom to the size of the room? Is there any type of ratio out there?
Yeah, that's a great question as far as the space you have. I can speak to the classroom I was in
Sure.
for many, many years. And we had I would call it a pretty big space. And we had consistently, from year to year, I would also change it because we all understand if we have to be in that environment, we need change too. So, but we basically had 4 to 5 areas. And I think that's a good number, even with a smaller space. But you have to also kind of, and I'll get to that a little bit later, but observe your children. And you might have one time where you've got lots of children that are block builders. So you change and maneuver your block area to be a little bit larger, and you might take some space from another area that's not being used as much. But I think 4 to 5 is a good number.
Okay, fantastic. And I want to
So
encourage anybody in our audience, if you have any questions during this presentation where you're like, hey, we set this up, this doesn't seem to be working, or what are your thoughts if we were to do this? Just bring those kind of questions on. I know Julie would love to answer those. But keep on
sure.
going, Julie.
Yeah, I love engaging with other early childhood professionals. You want to rotate materials. Sometimes I think that gets missed when we're so busy in a classroom from day to day, all of the things you have to do. So setting a schedule actually to remind yourself that you want to rotate materials. It helps the children stay engaged and keeps their interest level strong. And also, I think not to be so hard on yourself that you have to completely rotate everything in an area. It could be 1 or 2 things, and that's still a fresh look for children to engage. So that
Interesting.
helps. Yeah. Um, and then also defining the learning centers very visually for children. They should be able to come into a classroom and look at the classroom and see defined areas. They can see how much space they have to work with. They can see where one area ends and the other begins. And that can be done in lots of creative ways. Shelving units, open shelving units that have some plexiglass on the back, so you're able to get some visuals to the other areas when for supervision. Could be rugs, could be a rolling cart. There's lots of creative ways that you can define your spaces, but make sure that they are visual for children to be able to navigate.
Fantastic. When you look at setting up these defined spaces, do you also think that there is, a timing wise for how much time kids should spend on one station as to rotating, or do you have any theories behind that?
Great question. Um, I there are several thoughts of out there about how that should work. That you let them make their own decision on how they rotate, and do they have to get to every area? Do they not? Um, you know, I tend to think that you want children to be able to really engage in an area. And so you let them choose where they're going to go, and you let them work until they're finished and then move on. Um, there's also ways that you can, if you find someone who's kind of stuck in a certain area, and you're wanting them to move just for opportunities for other developmental places, you might move one of their comfortable things that they've been working in the block area with, move it to another area. Give them a comfort area to draw them in so that they have an opportunity to see other areas, because there's also the chance that they might not even be engaging with other children in their classroom if they haven't gotten to that area.
Sure.
Um, so I think that's a good way for them to kind of work on their development, and you watch and observe.
Perfect. Thank you. Here, let's move us forward here.
Mhm. And talking about room layout and traffic flow, this is really important. And I think, most people understand how this is, but just as a reminder that you want to make sure there's visibility to as many areas as you can have. If there's two teachers in a classroom, making sure that each of the teachers at least has areas covered. So there's some type of supervision. Making sure that you're arranging pathways that reduce congestion, but also wide openings to areas so children feel comfortable and engaged to be able to walk in. They're invited to come in. When you've got an area that has a very narrow pathway to get through and into it, sometimes that makes it difficult for children to visualize walking into that area. So as simple as making wider pathways into the areas. And then also having your quieter areas separated from your more active areas. I know in my classroom every year I would want to change things up just to try new things, but I always ended back with the dramatic play area and the block area needed to be in close proximity, because as we know, there's lots of activity, there's lots of opportunities for problem solving, there's role play, there's conversation, and that can be distracting for children who are wanting to work at a material with one or two people. So you want to make sure that those are as divided as you possibly can with the space you have.
Wonderful. Great. Is there, when you look at room flow layout, traffic flow, um, is this something that you should have a great deal of intention, or is it also something to, like what you were talking about earlier, sort of envision as the children are at different stations and how they tend to engage, so then you can build that flow around them?
Mhm. I think that observation and is key. So I think you start with a framework of a classroom setting that makes sense, and you are very intentional in how you've set it up. But it has to be individualized for the children you have in your classroom. So I think it's both. You be very
Mm.
intentional, but you're also moving and changing as you watch the children, and the goals you want for them, how you want to move them in their developmental journey. Um, it's really important to observe and be willing to change and try new things.
Sure, wonderful. I'd like to ask the audience if you guys would like to let us know if you are doing stations or the like within your classrooms. Is there any tips or tricks or things that you have done out there that have been like, yeah, this is something that worked out really well for us? On the converse side, you can also tell us if something didn't go well either, but we can all learn from that too. But let us know in the chat if there's things that you have done or that you feel are unique that other people on this call could glean from as we progress. So let's continue, Julie, if that's all right. Should we go to the next slide?
Yep, that's
All
great.
right.
I think I believe that our main goal in the environment is to move children or work children towards independence. That's why they come to preschool, is we want them to become independent learners and independent thinkers and have the ability to move within the space independently. Um, there's lots of ways you can set this up, but I think open shelving and picture labels are really important. You want the children to feel in control and that they've got this. That's signage on the shelving units that matches the signage that's on the tub or the basket that you have the materials in. So they very clearly can see where something goes and where it needs to be put back. I think, the best case scenario would be for you to have cleanup time where the children did it all. I mean, that's kind of your goal, is you want them to feel comfortable in their environment and be able to independently move through that environment. I do think that putting the word with the picture is also really important. Again, bringing that literacy component to everything. The more environment that the children see where they are seeing letters, they're seeing words, they already can decode the picture, all makes those connections towards reading skills.
Wonderful. We have a couple just a little comments that have come in. So before we continue on the slide,
Sure.
we have, for instance, Stephanie, who said here, yes, we have stations, learning centers, but allow for some crossover dependent on the student's interest and what is happening in the room.
Mhm.
Christy had mentioned, while we keep 5 main centers in each room, and while they are the same centers, each month the things in each center change to match the theme or the curriculum of focus. And you have Jesse, for instance, who said, my block center was usually where my circle time took place. Nice big open area. I love changing my dramatic play to match our theme. My favorite was making our dramatic play into a restaurant and menus and aprons for community helpers. So some great little hacks. Love it.
Oh yeah, I love that. That's really exciting to hear.
Wonderful.
I think also you want like materials put together. A puzzle rack with all of the puzzles in the rack. It's an organizational feel, so they know that all of the puzzles are going to go there. Putting labels on your blocks for the individual shapes of the blocks takes a little bit more space on your shelf, but a good way to show visual organization for children. And of course, ensuring that all children have access to the needed supplies. They're not having to reach around a shelving unit to get to something in the back, that it's all right in front and easy for them to manipulate. I think in the next part, creating a welcoming, inclusive space is really important. We want all children, to feel welcomed and part of the classroom. Um, Culturally relevant materials presented, reflecting diversity. Maybe you have some books in your bookshelf that have cultural celebrations pictured. Always having baby dolls that have many different skin tones can be looking like the art area where you've got different skin tone crayons or markers. Just subtle ways for children to find things that they can connect with. I also love having artwork on the walls that the children have done in the hallways. It gives them a sense of pride, and it also is a celebration of them and all of the things that they do. You're making a statement that you value them. And I think one of the biggest gifts we can give preschool children in the classroom is the ability to regulate their emotions. So important. And so I think it's important to have a quiet space or a quiet area in your classroom. And again, talking to the children and explaining what it is, why it's there, how they can use it, also helps them gain independence in being able to go there if they feel they need to. And providing sensory materials so that they have ways they can regulate their emotions. I think it's a great gift for us to give, and a way you can do that in your classroom is a quiet space.
Great. And I really appreciate that. I'm not sure if I step on your future part of your presentation, let me know, Julie. That's not what I
Mm-hmm.
want to do. Some of our schools were lucky enough to have enough space to do a gross motor skill room. Okay. And sometimes you can't do that right in your own classroom because of the size of the equipment that might be needed or the toys that are needed. Tell me a
Right.
little bit, if you are to set up a gross motor room, what kind of theories or what kind of approaches may you take around that side? Because obviously it's a little different than stations. You got kids riding around on tricycles, possibly,
Mm-hmm.
obviously with vinyl blocks or the like, and flipping all over those as they do.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit
Exactly.
about tell us a little bit about what you think about a gross motor room.
Well, I appreciate this one because I did have the extreme privilege of having a gross motor room, and it was wonderful. And we struggled with that a little bit about it being a free for all because it was a large space, and
Yeah.
here we are. Sometimes we use things like dividers, like a balance beam that became a divider for more of the kind of very active bicycles and tricycles, or moving things, versus a rocking boat and a balancing material, or a soft play space that they can climb in and out of. So we tried to kind of visually divide the room, not into centers, but into maybe in half, so that it gave the opportunity for kids to do both things, but not be interfering with others.
Yeah, and it's interesting. For some of my schools, I do have gross motor rooms, and one of the things my creative teachers have done is, taking just simply painter's tape, putting it
Yes.
down on the tile on the floor, and if it's carpeted, maybe not the best gross motor room, but you still could use tape. And it's also an education for the children of how to understand parameters, where they should be, where they shouldn't be, and sort of being able to not only keep them corralled in some areas,
Uh-huh.
those little kangaroos, but is to also allow them to understand about their spatial, exploration. So,
Yes. Well, and I that's really important for them to kind of know where they are in space and how to navigate that. And that's a development that they move through and get better at as they practice. I do think that oh gosh, I've kind of lost my train of thought.
well, let
Um,
me ask you about, gross motor. I think a lot of people understand with stations, and they think sometimes like, little tricycles and what have you. What are the other kind of, manipulatives or things that they could use for gross motor skill that people should consider having in a gross motor room?
well, I think sensory materials, so it could be like vinyl stepping stones, where they're and this is dependent on how the classroom, how the safety standards are, whether you allow them to be with sock feet, to be able to step on those kinds of things and move around with them. We had things like parachutes so that you could maneuver, or you could put bouncing balls, playground balls or bouncy balls on them, and shake them, and the trick was to make sure they didn't fall onto the ground. Um, we had things like stepping domes so that you could create a course basically with that. Also with the painter's tape, you can make shapes and have them jumping from shape to shape, which doesn't even really require a material. So you just create it with your painter's tape. Um, Trying to think of some other things. I don't know if other people have ideas, but there's so many creative things.
Yeah, and if you
So,
do, if anybody in the audience has any ideas, why don't you chat those in and we will look at them. Uh, so I have one from Beth here who says, I think of the environment as a yes space for children. They have access to all the material, make their own choices, test their ideas in ways they need. I often ask children for their ideas in the environmental design. They often have ideas that I wouldn't have even thought about. We turn the whole home center into a dance studio. So that's some fantastic stuff. Great
I
work up
love
there.
that. I love that. I did one time I had 1 year I had some children that wanted to make their own signs for all of the materials on the shelf. And so they drew the pictures and colored them in. But then we did have to talk about because some people's representations were more recognizable than others. So we talked about it and they talked about their picture and they told us what it was. And then we proudly put it on the shelf so people could know where to put things. So I love that. A yes environment is amazing.
Oh,
I think children need to be able to practice awe and wonder. And that's how you do it.
wonderful.
So, health, safety, and accessibility, I think, is kind of a given, but I just wanted to remind people about that, that you want the furniture to be child-sized. It needs to be safe. No tipping materials in the middle of a classroom. Keeping your walkways clear. I always, after a cleanup time, would take just a real quick visual to make sure there weren't any small manipulatives that accidentally didn't get in a basket so that there's no tripping material things. And then always make sure that the materials you're using have been tested to safety standards for the age that you're using them for. I think that's really important.
Yeah, and so, when we look at safety and, accessibility, I think it's really, something that's important. We've had issues, like we had a issue in one of my schools. This is several years ago now, but unfortunately, it used to be a preschool or an elementary school before we took it over. So it had those outlet boxes that stuck out of the wall. And so those things have sharp corners, and there was some children playing with a vinyl block. Even though that was covered, they still, of course, managed to hit their head on it, send themselves. We had the EMT have to come there and send themselves to the hospital.
Mm,
But it was one of the things that really looks back at when you look at those spaces, it does come down to your teacher's ability to manage those spaces.
yeah.
We notice, so there's never really a time, and I think most of us know this, but there's never a time that the inanimate objects protect you more than the teachers in the classroom. So the teachers always need to have the education, which I think is very important, as we have some very strong people on here, obviously, who know about classroom setup and management, but it's really the education and training. When you look at education and training, is there anything that you think, Julie, that you should speak to when you're coaching new teachers? There's a lot of teachers that we know in our industry who've never been in our field before. Okay,
Hmm.
this has happened, especially after COVID. A lot of people are coming to our industry that haven't had the background or the education in it, and we're trying to get them up to speed. What would be some of your top things that you would say to educate teachers on when it comes to things such as furniture, keeping, things safe, as well as the kind of materials that you're using?
I think you have to help them understand that they really need to look at their classroom with a fine-tooth comb and a very critical eye. Um, I This sounds so silly, but oftentimes I would get down on the ground where I believe you need to be to interact with preschoolers. And that's a totally different perspective than if I'm standing up and looking in a classroom. So I'm looking at the level they're at. And silly sounds like, but I would crawl around the room and I might notice things that were safety hazards or concerns that I wouldn't have seen if I were just an adult standing. So they need to really look and get on the level. I think it's also they need to frame their mind that you need to be proactively um, thinking
Mhm.
all the time about what might children do, because we all know they are going to do everything and then more that you didn't think of. You just go, how did you do that? But it it's difficult if they haven't had experiences with children, but just helping them understand that everything can be a safety hazard to a child and that
Sure.
you always got to be aware and looking and proactively thinking about what's coming around the corner.
So thank you for that answer, and I appreciate that. Another area around health and safety that I think is really important, and obviously, during the pandemic, we all, became hypersensitive to it, but that is the cleanliness of toys,
Yeah.
furnitures, equipment, vinyl blocks. State licensing has different requirements in every state. So
Mhm.
unfortunately, I know that there's really not sort of a one answer fits all because some states allow you to use a bleach mixture, other states not at all. Other states you can just use this or this. But from the fact that Constructive Playthings is bringing these toys to market who then end up in front of a child and toddlers who can't help but try to bite and eat everything you know is do you have any thoughts on the cleaning of toys or anything that would be in the classroom that comes out of like CPT?
Yeah, that is a priority when we're looking at new product, when we're developing product. How are you going to clean it? And I agree with you that it's always been something that early childhood classrooms dealt with, but since COVID, it is, much more at the forefront. So we are always looking for how are you going to clean it? What materials can we use that will um, allow it to be cleaned? Because, even wood furniture, which is lovely, but you've got to spray it down and then dry it. So there are some things that just by the nature of what they are make it a little more cumbersome to clean. But for us, when we're doing product development, it's a really important factor for us. For example, baskets that are dishwasher safe. So the baskets that you put your materials in can be put in the dishwasher. So that's a really nice feature for a product like that.
Yeah. And when you do think of things like wood, because that's usually a pretty expensive investment when it comes to that. Because I know that, we've bought wood tables and chairs and things of that nature. Is there a recommendation on how to clean wood appropriately so you get a long life out of it also? Not
Mm-hmm.
just for the cleanliness, because of course it's the cleanliness of the children is your priority, but hey, it's an investment for these owners out here. You're putting a lot into it, and the last thing you want to do is doing something like I say, like some kind of a bleach mix that is going to start wearing away on the finish immediately. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and our furniture is warranted from anywhere from 5 years to lifetime. So that is helpful that manufacturers are standing behind it. But as far as the cleaning of it, I think we always are recommending on wood furniture, um, really a simple soap and water solution, and that cleans the product and then making sure it gets dried. And I think sometimes, that's where the time comes in to make sure that you are also drying the wood. But a simple soap and water solution and
Great.
then drying the wood will maintain it for long periods of time.
Okay, well, fantastic. I appreciate that.
Mhm. And I think lastly, my last slide, I want to remind you to always be flexible and reflective. And our comments, I think the people on this presentation are aware of these kinds of things, but just reminders to always be assessing, being willing to change, observe the children, and have them be the lead in how your classroom is set up and what changes you make. Sometimes inviting your director or a co-teacher from another room in to watch a small time where the children are working. If you're having something that is a difficult thing, oftentimes it'll show up as behaviors that you hadn't seen. And you do have to look at your environment and wonder what you might be able to do to help that. So fresh eyes, I think, helps give you that perspective and something you may not have thought of before. And I always want to bring in the fact that we need to tap our families. They're a partner in this. And maybe you have a child who's having difficulty navigating the classroom, reaching out to them, having them give you some feedback on ways you can bring something in or make it more comfortable for them, so that they're successful in that environment.
Well, wonderful. Well, Well, Julie, this has been absolutely wonderful. We're going to continue on here and bring John on in a second. But I want to say that, what you've talked about here, I think is one of those things that some of it seems intuitive, but a lot of it still doesn't get implemented without a plan and without ensuring that you're measuring how effective it is. When you look at the kind of things and what we love the fact that Julie came on here today, to remind us about some of the things that are going on and some of the best practices. But I think that is something that can be super helpful when you look at, hey, we want to get a fresh start. Sometimes I even ask, because I go into our school so often at times that I don't have a fresh set of eyes. Having other people come in sometimes who haven't been, affiliated with your school in a long while, have them come in, take a look at that and see what they have to say, what they might see that's missing, because we see it every single day, and sometimes it's tough to get a fresh perspective. But Julia,
Exactly.
I want to really thank you for your little presentation here, and we're bringing John on board.
Okay. Thank you, Tony. I appreciate the time.
No problem. Hey, John, how are you?
I'm doing well, Tony. How are you?
Doing great. So, John is the guy who can really help you out there answer some of the questions. Now, this is whether you're with us and having them come through, like for instance, with our affiliate relationship, if you're working with Jesse or if you're working with Jen and you get connected for our members and are like, hey, I want to take advantage of all the extra value that our program has. You might at some point be talking to John, but in addition to that, too, John might be a person that could really help you think through, especially if you're setting up a new school and you're wanting to get a new school set up with all the different kinds of equipment like. But John, why don't you take it away? Why don't you tell us a little bit about, what makes you guys different there?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. So you have a lot of different options as to where you get the furnishings for your school. We certainly understand that. And the information Julie provided really holds no matter where you get it, right? So one of the things that we pride ourselves in being different with is by teachers and for teachers. As Seth mentioned, his grandmother was the one who started the business over 70 years ago, and she was a teacher. Started with that foundation, as Julie emphasized here, it's continued with that foundation. So that family-owned legacy is really about the long-term relationships and trust that we're trying to give our folks we work with. Less about short-term profit chasing, really mostly about building those partnerships and ensuring the equipment in your school is up to the highest standard. And if there's anything we can do to help facilitate that, we're here to do so. As Julie mentioned, she has spent a long time in the classroom. She mentioned she would get down on the floor to validate the safety in the classroom. She does just the same inside the office when she's picking products. So unique and purposeful assortments. Products are hand selected, and it's really about the learning outcome, the development, and then the impact that it can have meaningfully in the classroom, not just about how quickly we can get it off the shelves. As always, again, 70 plus years of being in business, high quality standards, that's paramount. Not everybody can buy new furniture every 2 years. So we want to make sure that what we are willing to sell, we stand behind and it lasts. And finally, not really finally, but also a really important thing about what we do that is a little bit different is a partnership mindset. We have been in various stages in our 70 years. I think, as Seth had mentioned, really going all in on Constructive Playthings, where historically we had been also with US Toy. We want to partner with anyone who comes to us seeking help to furnish their classrooms. That could be product ideas, that could be different types of assortments. We're here to listen. And one idea from an assistant director or a teacher may be something that thousands of teachers have been thinking about. So we want to make sure we are here to listen. And any feedback you can provide us, we take very, very seriously. So
I think that's great. So one of the things, do you guys, and I think, and this is a little bit of a leading question, okay? Do you guys do playground equipment, John?
We do playground equipment. We also do playground installation in the 48 contiguous states. So where a lot of times folks will be able to get you the equipment, they'll tell you you're on your own for everything else. We aren't that. So we can get the equipment for you. Our playground specialists have been doing it for over 25 years. They are absolute experts in the field. So give us a call. We can help you with any questions you have there.
Fantastic. Just from another owner perspective, I think when it comes to playgrounds, you can spend a real fortune on playgrounds, but it's sort of a tight marketplace. Like it's not a big margin business. It's very competitive and it's really about high quality. What is your position on quality for the kind of playground stuff that you bring to market?
Yeah, so the quality is obviously paramount. Safety is absolutely key because it has to pass rigorous standards that all childcare facilities, depending on the state, it's crucial that we have long-term relationships with installers and organizations that do, laying the surfacing. The we can source anything, but given the nature and duration of the specialists that we have on our team, they will point you in the direction of quality first and then find what will work for you in terms of what budget you might have, with quality and safety being paramount. So I think that's one of the things we have where other folks who haven't been in playgrounds for quite as long, they may have a wide assortment that looks great, but they don't necessarily have the experience and what works and what may not work for the exact space you have. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's really important because, a lot of these playground equipments and some of them pop up, they can buy huge playground things from like Alibaba or something like that online and have it all delivered and then set up with a landscaper to do it. But if you don't have sort of that experiential background and that history of knowing what can be safe, what is going to last, why it lasts, you won't get yourself upside down with a very expensive purchase. So, John, thank you for that. And so it's time for our raffle. Have you guys been able to figure out who is, after you put everything in a hat and pulled one
I
out?
have. I put it in a little name generator as I was in the background here. So the name that came up, we have Amanda Romero.
Okay, Amanda, wonderful. Amanda, you've won $100 Constructive Playthings gift certificate. I think since you registered for this, we will be reaching out to you to make sure that we have the right place to send it to you, whether it be an email that they have or a physical card that goes out. John, I want to thank you and Seth and Julie for not only this presentation, but a generous gift card like this too. So thank you so much.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. And thank you for your time, John, and everybody at Constructive Playthings. Again, let me just remind everybody, you have it in your chat. If you do need a certificate, just click on the link, fill it out. You will get that certificate for yourself. We're more than happy. You get stuck in any way, just let us know. We'll make sure you get that. That's not an issue whatsoever. And so, again, congratulations, Amanda, on our next one that we will be having next month on October 14th. We are coming for another revisit with Mecca. It's been about 2 years plus since Mecca had joined us. She's just absolutely wonderful in the way that she communicates, the way she's so grounded and down to earth. But going to be talking about the power of communication in leadership. This is a really important topic. I just did a presentation for New Mexico's association, and I was a keynote speaker this past week on moving from management to leadership. And I think it is always a journey. It's not something you can figure out and get done just like that. So it is something that it is always a learning process. I recommend that if you folks, we'll put an email out right away. You'll also get a replay of this notification, and this goes into becomes a podcast. And you go to our website under resources, and you look for Care for the Child Care Owner. These webinars become a podcast, but there's also another series of podcasts there, and that's called ECE CEO Biography. And we just had Joe Kirchner, who is just being released next week, who is the CEO of Primrose, who talks all about her ascension as a leader and a lot of learnings from that. So look for that coming down. Just basically, connect us to your channel for podcasts, and you will always get these that get just immediately dropped right onto your phone. So if you're in the car or something like that, you can listen to these whenever you would like to. And so finally, we want to say thank you very much from the bottom of our hearts for taking the time to join us today. We believe in high tides raise all ships. So you can shoot this for a QR code. You'll also have it in our chat notes here about Inspire Care 360. But if there's anything you want to know more about us, learn how we can be helpful for you, we would love to be able to be supportive for you. So we want to thank everybody for taking the time. Congratulate Amanda again. Thank Julie, Seth, and John for their time. So Tony DiAugustino, founder and CEO of Inspire Care 360. Again, thank you very much and have a wonderful rest of your day and have a wonderful fall. We'll talk to you all very soon. Talk to you in October. Bye-bye now.